There we go.
And we are live.
Are we live?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. It's not doing it on my screen. I don't know
Okay.
what's happening. My computer's being... Oh, wait. Let me...
We're here.
Oh, my God. I can't, like, all my stuff is just crapping out.
What?
And we are live on the YouTubes.
All right. We are live on the YouTubes. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're saying goodbye to the beginning and hello to the bitter, bitter end. We're looking ahead at the Clone Wars Season 7 this week on your Star Wars safe space. Stick around. All right. Of course, special guest this week, technical difficulties, joining us once again. Hey there, Star Warriors. Welcome to Star Wars Safe Space, your non-toxic, low-sodium Star Wars show that doesn't make you feel bad for not knowing that the Siege of Mandalore arc in the Clone Wars Season 7 plays out in real time alongside Revenge of the Sith, syncing up perfectly with Anakin's fall and Order 66. And it's so cool, and we're going to watch it. We're going to see all this stuff, but Ahsoka is engaged in a battle while Anakin is engaged in a battle on the other side of the galaxy, and it's just so cool, but it's also incredibly heartbreaking. So whether you're a hardcore fan or just a little Swordsy curious, this is your Star Wars safe space, and we are the Circle of Nerds, and we do absolutely positively love Star Wars, even if we don't always like it. So let's go around and meet the crew, shall we? Hailing from parts unknown, it is T to the Oni.
Welcome back to the galaxy, everybody. As you said, we are heading into some dark, dark times.
We are.
Maybe my lighting reflects that, but that's okay.
And yeah, I feel like all of our situations, except for crashes, reflect the dark times ahead right now. Everything's kind of just going tits up. And captain of the infamous Parma Flyer, it's Crash.
Hey, everybody. If there's a bright center of the universe, it's my screen. Let's get those S-foils locked and get at it.
Well said. Hey, speaking of a bright center to the universe, hold on, we'll do that in a second. So what are we doing here? Our mission is to watch all of the canon Star Wars films and TV shows in chronological order, breaking them down, connecting the dots, and learning more about Star Wars and maybe even a little about ourselves. So a word of warning to all you would-be Star Warriors, there will be spoilers. So please be prepared for that. Now, before we actually dive in, I want to take a moment to apologize to last week's guest, TJ Wanagas. Is that correct?
Wanagas, yeah.
Wanagas. I'm fucking his name up too. CO of the Midwest Garrison of the 501st Legion. He's also a member of the Rebel Legion, but for some reason, I don't know why, I fixated on the Rebel Legion part and just kept referring to him being the CO of the Rebel Legion.
And that's my job.
Yeah. So, and apparently everyone was too polite to correct me. So I just continued ignorantly rambling on like a fucking idiot. So that's good stuff. So TJ, if you're watching or listening, I apologize for the mix up. You are the CO of the 501st Midwest Garrison. All right. So either way, thank you for being a nerd and holding it down for Star Wars nerds anyway. So anywho, let's get into it, shall we? Now, Crash, you had mentioned a bright center to the universe, and you found this really, really cool map of the galaxy. Where did you find that?
Yeah, this is up on the main StarWars.com site. They've updated the map to include everything from the movies, Disney Plus shows, animated shows, books, comics. Yeah, when Disney bought Star Wars, it was a kerfuffle because they reset the canon, legends, timeline, all the expanding universe stuff. Right. They had this vast, all these new worlds that were being created, and people were like, "Well, why are you getting? Look at this map. Look at all these, and they've got all these worlds and dots on this map, built with a built-in battleship grid and spreadsheet database. So if you want to find a particular planet, you just pick the letter, pick the number, and there you go. And they know what sector it is, what region it is. And I mean, this thing's phenomenal. If you were doing like a D&D game or something like that, if you were world building for something or character building for something, this is the best reference map you'll find. And this was amazing. I spent like 20 minutes just looking up certain planets. Like I've been watching Andor lately, so I was like, okay, where's Gorman? Where's Fair? Yeah, I'm just trying to like, okay, how far away was this? Yeah,
right.
This is a great resource that the main site put up.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I'm noticing at the bottom there, it does say DK. So I assume that's DK Publishing, which leads me to believe that we can get this in physical form. And depending on how big it is, it may be suitable for framing.
Possibly.
So I love that. That is so freaking cool. I love how they have the unknown regions there. That is awesome. Unfortunately, there's no Yuzon Vong sneaking around in there that we know about. But, that's all right. That's all right. We'll get them eventually. I do notice that there's no A or B. So they start with C and go to U. I wonder why that.
They also cut off before the end of the alphabet too. But
yeah. I mean, I get that because I mean, if you don't have enough grid squares to go across, I get it. But why omit A and B? That's
That was just a quick screen grab I made. I have to look on the main site, see maybe the original version actually has the full grid. I don't know.
No, I don't know. I mean, it looks. I mean, the screen grab you did was great. I mean, it's everything. Okay. Everything's there. Everything's there. That seems like it should be there. I don't know. I don't know. I wonder if there's like some sort of cartography reason for that. I have no idea. All right. So what are we talking about this week? Well, we've got a few topics that we're going to be setting up. So we're going to do a quick recap of season 6. We're going to talk about Ahsoka and her evolution as a character, and her very conspicuous absence from season 6. We've got the Fall of the Jedi, Palpatine's final moves, and then what to expect from season 7. So we're in for a good time today. So let's go. So Lost Mission. So this is a reminder that season 6, these weren't like deleted scenes. They were crucial narrative bridges. These were very, very important episodes to the overall Star Wars story. So we're incredibly lucky that we got them. To have had season 6 not materialize, in this way would have been a tragedy. And, we probably would have needed to get it from books or comics or some other source, but to actually have these episodes as part of our story is awesome. We got to see Fives and the inhibitor chips, and then how his arc was the first real show of weakness for the Jedi. Like we have, it was the crack in their armor. We had seen their ignorance throughout the series. We've seen their arrogance throughout the series, but this was a major red flag. And it just kind of like I don't want to say it went over their heads. It was willfully ignored, and it was willfully spun to make it a non-issue when it should have been a huge issue. But because of politics, they kind of swept everything under the rug. And then, it kind of comes back. We had Clovis and the banking clan, so a little more political than flashy, but still a key piece to understanding how Sidious tightened the grip economically. I mean, seeing him out of nowhere, seemingly, getting control of the banks, that was a huge move from Papa Palpy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one that I personally didn't see coming, but it just shows that game that he's playing. He's going to get all these little pieces that he needs to have this total authoritarian control. And then we see in episode 4, the Senate, the last piece of Palpatine's puzzle, the Senate gets dissolved. And that was it. That was it. That's all he needed. But I mean, granted, it took 18 years for him to do it, but in all that time, he was just building and building and building and building. And then Yoda's mystery journey. I thought that was kind of cool as well. We got some more insight into the Force. We got to see the origins, essentially, of the Force ghost concept. And that was really kind of cool. I mean, was it lore that we needed? Probably not, but it was nice to get it, I think. And to have Qui-Gon back for a minute to teach Yoda. But then that also ties in directly to what we see in Revenge of the Sith, when Yoda's talking to Obi-Wan about an old friend returning and how he's got some training for Obi-Wan. So it's just like, I'm so excited about it. It's just, season 6, for better or for worse, was a great way to bridge the Clone Wars animated to the live action series and specifically Revenge of the Sith. But it sets up so many different pieces for the rest of the franchise for years to come. So I don't know your thoughts, guys. I'm the one. I'm sorry. I'm overly excited about this stuff. So please just jump in, dive in. What are your thoughts on season 6?
I mean, it's all very well said by you, and there's not a defining, at least to my mind, there's not a defining moment that we've seen yet. I know one's coming in episode 3. But there's not a defining moment where you realize just how deep the rabbit hole goes, just how deep the control has been set up by Palpatine, that you get in other forms of media and other universes. I'm reminded very much of Arnim Zola's speech in Captain America Winter Soldier, where he basically says, we've created a world so chaotic that humanity's finally ready to sacrifice its freedom to gain its security.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Palpatine has done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get defined out that way, which is good, because there's something to be said for the fact that don't monologue, don't give away your plan until you're sure.
Right.
But I mean, that's exactly what's being done. And fortunately, there's some scary parallels to real life in that, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, we try not to talk about real life, but you are 100% correct.
Yeah, I mean, so that setup has been very interesting to see, and we've seen more of it in this last season than we have in anything prior to them. And it's literally just, this next season is just going to be those final things clicking into place, and it's not going to be pretty.
And and like you were saying, about him setting things up, and we're seeing him, the getting control of the banks, that was huge. But there's this subtlety to his plan, and he doesn't monologue until the very end. And so it's a cautionary tale about monologuing. Don't do that shit, because it's how you get killed. But he doesn't. He keeps it low key. He's got a plan. He's sticking to it. But the most subtle thing,
and the subtle thing is
faded away.
Hey, well, he's fixing.
Sorry.
That's okay.
He's back.
I don't know what's going on, man.
And that's the secret of life.
You started talking too much about Palpatine out loud. He heard you.
Yeah. Seriously.
You sly dog. You got you monologuing.
Hey. No, but I was gonna say the subtle thing is that him putting boots on the ground everywhere in the galaxy. So he has complete control of everything. Wherever there's clone troopers, wherever there's droids, they're going to send in more clone troopers to clean them up. And now he's got that foothold everywhere. And it was just, he is such just a douche. But you have to admire the precision in everything that he's done. And it's been in plain sight the entire time. He did it in front of the Jedi's noses, right there. Like, bam. Went to Qui-Gon's funeral like a boss and just chilling while they were talking about, was it the master or the apprentice? While they were talking about him. And he's just standing there like, that's me, guys. And like, the Jedi were none the wiser. They were none the wiser. And I was going to ask, you know, we've talked about this before. So now that we've finished season 6 and we are going into the end here, based on everything that we've seen from seasons 1 through 6, did the Jedi ever have any chance, no matter how remote, at stopping the Sith once the war started? Like, or was it just so masterfully planned out that a few little anomalies and hiccups aside, did the Jedi stand a chance?
I don't think so. I think, you know, like we said, you know, we start off with Darth Maul, and obviously he gets taken off the board. And you notice Palpatine immediately just shifted the plan to play, you know, slightly, gets a new apprentice, a better politically minded, you know, we talked about this before. We were trying to figure out where Darth Maul would have fit in the plan as we know it. Like, I don't see Darth Maul leading a separatist government, but
no, he was a hammer.
Yeah,
he was a hammer. Yeah,
and so then you think, okay, well, then they would have to find somebody to be the face of the Confederacy that he could order around. You know, would it have been Newt Gunray if he hadn't screwed up on Naboo? Who knows?
Dooku was perfect for that.
Yeah,
Dooku was the perfect face of the Confederacy.
And the thing I found interesting about season 6, as opposed to going into season 6, you know, they call it the Lost Missions,
right? And
you could tell some of these concepts were already being worked on because, like, Ian Abercrombie, you know, we know who voiced Palpatine, died,
right?
And they had to get Tim Curry to come in and do some, you know, recordings to fill in some gaps. And as the season 6 progressed, you know, we flipped back and forth between them because, you know, he recorded dialogue for this episode, but not this episode. And you could tell these were a lot of, with the exception, I think, the Clovis arc, I think, and the Yoda arc at the end, they were mostly standalone stories.
Yeah.
Whereas in season 7, you're going to find out that, you know, Dave and the guys were sitting whenever, you know, Disney told them, hey, you get to finish the story. I think somebody on a dry board went, okay, 4 episode arcs, let's do it. Because you got back to what worked on the show when it was on Cartoon Network, where those multi-episode arcs where you could, you know, have a cliffhanger every week and then progress the story along.
It was beautiful. And so then that's where we are with season 6. And it's like, on the face of it, it doesn't seem like much, but again, when you look at, I'm geeking out over the banking, the bank stuff. I really am. It was just so masterfully played. You know, there was still some action in those too, but we got to see, you know, Anakin's, you know, fall a little bit, his jealousy. We got to see that a little bit, but that was just like, you know, the icing on the cake for this. It was Palpatine being Palpatine. All right, enough about that jerk. So Ahsoka, character evolution. Let's talk about that from the movie all the way to season 5, because we don't get anything from her in season 6. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Crash.
She showed up briefly in Yoda's dream so Ashley did get to work, you know, again, it was something they probably recorded before, and But yeah, this was a definite case where, like, when this first came out on Netflix, there were certain, Catherine Tabor got a lot of screen time, more screen time on the Lost missions than she did in most seasons of the Cartoon Network run.
Right.
And it was just, because the story, the Clovis story was basically focused on her and a rival for Anakin.
Right. But yeah, so I mean, we don't get a story from Ahsoka. She's just there as a plot device and as set dressing, basically. So we don't get, yes, Ashley did, get paid. But I mean, did we ever think we were going to see Ahsoka again? I mean, at that point, watching it for the first time, I thought that was a wrap on Ahsoka when she left the Jedi Temple, and that was it.
I don't know. I don't know if Tony has heard this story before or not. I was in Chicago for the celebration in 2019 when they announced that Clone Wars was coming back, and this was a big deal. This was a Comic-Con Hall D huge level event. I got some pictures I posted on our social. I'm gonna see if I can pull one of them up. And it was just it was great because, okay, do you have it?
What?
The pictures from the Chicago panel?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. They brought the entire cast in, including Dave Filoni and everybody. They were showing concept art. They were showing the first look we got at the Bad Batch. Nobody knew what these guys were about. They just told us it was going to be this like A-team of altered clones, and
should have been Omega Squad. It should have been Omega Squad. I fell in love with the Bad Batch, but initially I was not happy with the Bad Batch. Anyway,
but just the idea that, again, after so many years, when the show came out on Netflix for season 6 to season 7, again, season 6 ended and we were like, that's it. You had your wrap up and it was just going to lead right into Revenge of the Sith. And Disney went, hold on, we're going to give you another season to tie things up. And I mean, as you're going to see, the final couple episodes are so masterfully interwoven into episode 3. But just the idea that they brought this cast together to do a final season their way, the way they wanted it to be.
Right.
And with the case of Ahsoka, there's another picture. Let's see if we can pull that one up. Yeah. The character model they showed of her at the convention, because again, she's left the Jedi Order. When they dropped a trailer, there was a shot of her riding her hover bike, and the place went wild.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know what our girl was up to after she left that shot of her leaving the temple. That was it.
Right. We never thought that we would ever see Ahsoka Tano again. Ever. We thought that was a wrap on Ahsoka.
This is street team Ahsoka here. And, it was a big deal that, she left the Order and what was going to happen to her.
I really do think that I think of all of the characters. Uh-oh.
So, Tony, what do you think going in with what you know so far about Ahsoka coming back and getting all these loose ends tied up? What was your initial reaction when you heard that was a season 7?
I mean, I'm thrilled to be able to. Obviously, I was not watching it back then. So, for me, the announcement itself was not a big thing because I wasn't paying attention to it back then. But knowing that we're getting to see it and knowing that we're getting more of this character, I mean, especially, where I am, having seen the live action Ahsoka stuff, and just basically getting some semblance of the story of how she came from leaving the Jedi Temple to becoming who she is in the live action, because obviously that was never touched upon in any of the movies or anything else. So when she left at the end of season, when she left in season 5, it was very much up in the air of, okay, well, it's cool that we got this character in live action, but how did she get from here to there?
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that we are going to get more of her coming up, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Honestly, do I want more than just that? Yes. But I also am somewhat familiar with the fact that we're going to get a little bit more of that in Rebels. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Because, even when the show first aired, from the very beginning, there was a pocket of the fandom menace that we know that hated I talked about this on our social page. I said, Ashley even acknowledged that at the beginning there were people who hated the character because they said she was disrespectful, she was sassy, and leave it to my sister Snips to come back with a really good explanation of how all these guys complaining about Ahsoka, the younger Ahsoka, being a snotty, snippy brat, and Dave Filoni wanted it was an intentional move, for her to grow, progress as a character. Again, the narrative being we hated her at first, but now we love her. Well, you ask a young female what they thought of Ahsoka, and it's like, yeah, she's standing. Nobody complained about Obi-Wan Kenobi when he talks back to Qui-Gon Jinn. They didn't call him disrespectful.
Or Anakin talking back to everyone.
Right.
Like straight up disobeying, like just disobeying everyone.
Right. And it was like, it just, again, leave it to Snips to put a master class about, okay, here's what the female perspective of Ahsoka, through the years is. And I mean, I was sitting there, I read it, and I reposed, and I'm just like slow clapping because as a fan, I was like, I saw the fandom react to it. I saw the fandom, the other half of the fandom sort of rise up and say, no, we like this girl. We like her growth. We want more of her. And the idea that, Ashley put a lot of her own personal equity into the hashtag Ahsoka lives. And I mean,
right.
The reason the popularity of Ashley and her universe and Ahsoka Tano is a big reason this show got a last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get to see her continue on, and I obviously that's in large part to Dave, but also you had the cast, really rooting for these characters that everyone fell in love with, so and we're not done with Ahsoka. I mean, she's still out there kicking.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the character. Let's go back to the character and her disillusionment with everything, with the Republic, with the Jedi. It really does parallel Anakin's, but we see how radically different their paths turn out. Like they're both disillusioned and upset about the same things. But Ahsoka clearly does not fall the way that Anakin does, and why do we think that is? I mean, was she more morally strong? Was she morally stronger than the Jedi Council and Anakin by the end? Or was it because she didn't have the influence of the Council and a Sith Lord, messing with her head? She was able to like move away from all of that and then kind of grow and become who she is now.
Well, Anakin comes with a lot of baggage from the beginning.
Sure.
Growing up a slave, being without his mother, seeing his mom die.
Ooh, in a harsh way too.
We obviously we get a glimpse at Ahsoka's early life a little bit in Tales of the Jedi, but as far as she's concerned, her family's off and they're living their best life and they're okay. Anakin saw the one person he knew as family die in his arms, come home and basically cling to the first, girl that comes along as a support figure, and Padme. I mean, he's paired up with this girl he's got a crush on, and he's going through this traumatic event, and you don't think he's going to be emotionally attached to her?
Of course. I mean, he was crushing on her, a little bit before, but
yeah.
But
it's just this idea. Anakin has so much emotional baggage with him that was easy for Palpatine to exploit.
Oh, of course.
Whereas Ahsoka's sort of got the best of Anakin and his teaching, and we've seen her talk about it on the show. The show where did you learn to do? You taught me how to disregard bad orders, and
right.
You taught me how to find a new way around a problem that the council wouldn't approve. That kind of. Ahsoka is the best of Anakin without the emotional baggage.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sorry, Tony. Go ahead, please.
I think this goes a little bit deeper than that. I agree with everything you're saying, but I mean, I almost look back at it's not a bloodline, but that's what I'm going to refer to it as. I mean, this goes back all the way to Dooku. I mean, Dooku disillusioned with the Jedi Council, ends up falling.
Yeah.
Who did he teach? Qui-Gon. Disillusioned with the Jedi Council, but didn't fall. Who did he teach? Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
So far, we haven't really seen Obi-Wan disillusioned with the Council, but we also, like, there are quiet moments and things where he's like, listen, not everything's perfect, but he's still very much a believer. And then he taught Anakin. Anakin, clearly not a huge fan of the Jedi Council, and we know where he goes. And he taught Ahsoka. So it's no surprise to me that she grew disillusioned with the Council, because look at that background that she's been trained through.
That's true. That's a great point. That's a great observation. Yeah. 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 It's almost like it skips a generation.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that with Ahsoka, you know, you nailed it. It's like, you know, she got the best of Anakin. You know, she is the best of Anakin. She, you know, they're
and a little bit of Padme, you know, because she
yeah.
looked at Padme like almost like a sister figure.
Yeah.
You know, so she got the best of both of them.
Yeah. And I think like, and Tony, you had mentioned about Obi-Wan not necessarily like being disillusioned with the Jedi Council, but you could tell that he was very conflicted at times. I know there was a scene where, you know, and I think it's in Revenge of the Sith, and, you know, Anakin says, like, you know, I can't believe you'd ask me to do this, you know, and Obi-Wan says, I'm not asking you, the Council's asking you, you know, and it was kind of like just that little subtle nudge to Anakin to try to let him know that he was on his side. You know, I think Obi-Wan did that quite a few times, you know, tried to subtly let Anakin know that he can relate, that he knows what he's going through, especially with Padme. Obviously, you know, he had his relationship with Satine, so he knows what's happening between Anakin and Padme, and he tried to let Anakin know that he was there for him. But man, Anakin's head was just so gassed. We
touched on this before, but I mean, you know, Anakin, again, the one member of this line of Jedi who didn't walk away from the Council at some point.
Yeah.
And look at what he lost.
Everything.
I mean, you know, quite possibly the most tragic figure in all of it.
He lost everything. And I think he is, I would argue that Obi-Wan is potentially more of a tragic figure, but Anakin went through hell. I mean, but it was a hell of his own making.
Exactly. That's the difference.
And that's
like, don't get me wrong, Anakin's tragic, but he made the choice to be that.
He did. He made all the choices, but he was also being so masterfully manipulated, you know, by Palpatine, and then just really not taken seriously by the Council either. You know, he wasn't really being mentored the way that he should have been. I don't think, anyway. I mean,
by a long shot.
You know, so I mean, in many ways, Obi-Wan's hands were tied. There's only so much. Obi-Wan did his best, but Anakin was a force of nature. The only person that could have trained him properly was Qui-Gon. You know, and that was it.
I feel like if Anakin had been trained, and this is the one benefit that I think Ahsoka had, is Ahsoka, you know, yes, she primarily, you know, Anakin was her master.
Mm-hmm.
But she clearly spent a lot of time with Plo. She clearly spent a lot of time with Obi-Wan. She clearly spent a lot of time with other masters and got influence from all of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And had Anakin had that breadth of influence on him as opposed to just Obi-Wan. Again, not that Obi-Wan did anything wrong.
Sure. But he did the best he could.
Yeah. But like if he'd had that breadth of experience with other masters teaching him along the way.
And he may have. I agree with you, but see, that would be interesting too. You know, Tales of Anakin Skywalker. You know, there's still like this huge gap of time, you know, between 9 and 18 or 9 and 20, I think, however old he was. But I think he's in his like early 20s, like 19, 20 when we see him in the Attack of the Clones. So that there's like a whole 10-year time gap, and we don't know what went on.
That's true. We don't officially know. I feel like the way that the council made very clear and at the end of episode 1 that they really didn't want to teach him, and it's basically Obi-Wan saying, "I don't give a fuck, I'm doing it anyways."
Yeah,
tells me that they probably didn't give him a whole lot of support along the way, which is fucked up on their part. But again, they've made plenty of mistakes.
There's been some books, especially like young adult books.
Yeah,
they did a series about Obi-Wan with Qui-Gon when he was a Padawan.
Great books, by the way.
Yeah, oh, they're fantastic.
Very.
I say young adults, and I tell you, I read through them all because it was just great. I love that time era, and it was. Yeah. And then they did a sequel series with Obi-Wan and a younger Anakin, and it was like, again, it was one of those things. A lot of the expanded universe books and stuff of that time, their number one problem was that Lucasfilm basically told them, okay, you can write these stories, but don't, you can't spoil anything. You can't break new ground on anything. So it was always a self-contained one-off.
Right.
But you got a little glimpse of the tension between Obi-Wan and Anakin. There's a great book now in the new canon called Brotherhood.
Okay.
It tells the story of the two of them and older. And they're both, I think Anakin had just been knighted. So they were more of equals as far as the Jedi Order was concerned. But there was still that brother dynamic because, people think, well, Obi-Wan was like a father figure to him. No, actually, he was the older brother that the dead father said, you got to raise your younger sibling, even though you're probably not ready for that yet.
And we get to see some of that really lovely interaction in the micro series.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of, push and pull there, but I think we do get to see some of that nice dynamic there.
And over time, I'm not as big of a fan of the micro series as I was when they first came out, for various reasons.
Sure.
But that was one of the better aspects of the show. For what little there was of it, was that they got to play a little bit more of the banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin. And I think Dave maybe took that and expanded upon it when he wrote the full length Clone Wars episodes, because you just have more time to work with.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's really like when you do stop to really think about it and kind of dissect it, the relationship between the two of them was already a really dynamic relationship. But then you throw Ahsoka into the mix, and in many ways, I think that Yoda did see the coming darkness in Anakin and assigned Ahsoka to him, to try to stem that tide. And in many ways she did. She was able to be his conscience sometimes, but she still learned a lot of his bad habits, but they were a great team, but they weren't an Obi-Wan and Anakin team, so I'm excited about season 7. Tony, I'm excited for you to see Ahsoka again in season 7. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on as we go out, but that's going to be part of our homework. The first few episodes that we're watching of season 7, it's the Ahsoka arc. So you're gonna start the season with our girl with Snips. So, and it's a great story too. It's a great story. So next I wanted to talk about, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but the fall of the Jedi. And at this point, how all of the pieces are in place. The Jedi were spread thin by design. Palpatine, of course, he engineered that. Again, we do not like Palpatine. However, you really have to admire the planning that went into this, because he obviously came up with all this on his own. I mean, he didn't really clue anybody else in. He couldn't. But for him to have, this tactical acumen that he has is just, it's next level. And the fact that this is one of my favorite, and I put this in my notes because this was one of my favorite things, is that the Jedi unknowingly allowed the army that was going to end up killing them. Like they served in and continued to support the same army that would eventually kill them all. And that is just bitter irony. And the whole thing was controlled by a Sith, and they never knew it. They never knew it, that they're serving side by side with people who are going to kill them because just a single text message and a phone call from Palpatine is going to turn them on you just like that. And they never knew. It was right there in front of them the entire time, and they never ever knew.
Prior to end of season 5, start of season 6, like, you know, like, I mean, we've talked about this before. You know, there, you know, to me, there was kind of an obvious, okay, so the guy who was the basis for this clone army is directly aligned with Dooku. Right. That should have been enough of a red flag right there. But you know what? Okay, like maybe in the heat of the moment, and you know what, we fucking need an army right now. Okay, I get it. We're just, you know, we're gonna blow past that. But after the Fives arc, and especially after the Cypher arc, like,
yes,
how the fuck like and at this point it's not even that they don't know, because like
right there
make it kind of clear that like they know it's fucked up,
yeah,
but they don't have any other choice at this point.
Well, and like I said,
it's hope, and it's like, okay, that's great, but you don't see the writing on the wall at this point. Like,
all of the writing,
you don't have to be a Jedi to not see the writing on the wall.
In big bold neon letters, there's writing. I mean, the neon fucking sign, like, these are the red flags. Cypher Diaz, the Sith, the clone troopers, the chips. What the fuck?
And you know, when they do come to realize that the clone army was built by somebody under Dooku's control, you know, unlike the Acolyte, where we see a Jedi, you know, try to manipulate facts and basically lie to cover her own ass, you know, Yoda said they had to keep a secret to protect the confidence of the Republic in the. You imagine not being able to trust your own army? I mean, again, we could. I don't want to get too real world with that, but there's this idea that the Jedi were concerned that the clones, you know, image within the Republic, you know, you can't do a factory recall on your army all in one big swoop
in the middle of a war. Like,
right.
What are you going to do? And that was perfectly engineered. I mean, like, they knew that there was something wrong, but it was checkmate at that point. I mean, there's nothing they could have done. Like you said, you're not going to you can't factory reset. You can't build a whole new batch of clones, you know, without the chips.
And especially as we know now, you know, the Kaminoans are in on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're getting paid. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care about the war. They don't care about any of it as long as they get paid for their clones. That's, you know, and again, that is very much, you know, another Star Wars cautionary tale. You know, we're talking about the greed of corporations. You know, we don't care about, you know, the moral issues. You know, we don't have a moral compass. We don't need it as long as those profits are rolling in. You know, we can turn a blind eye to whatever you're doing. We just need those profits.
Late-stage galactic capitalism. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, big question about the Jedi. Was the fall of the Jedi Order just an unfortunate tragedy, or was it an inevitability? Like, would it have happened regardless without Palpatine's prompting, or was this, would the Jedi Order have endured for another 1,000 years? What do you guys think? Tragedy or inevitability? Or maybe a little column A, a little column B?
It's definitely column A, column B, because the way I see it, had it not been for Palpatine in this war and everything, you know, the whole arc that we're going through here,
right?
I don't think the Jedi Council ultimately would have survived in its current form, because I think more and more you were getting people of Dooku and Qui-Gon's line who were questioning the morals of it, questioning the reasoning behind it,
Okay.
questioning the rules. And I think at some point there would have been splinters. Like
Okay.
maybe you've got, you've got a faction that's old school Yoda, Mace, and that line. But then you've got another faction that's, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and that line who are more flexible on certain things. And at some point it would have become just they would no longer be, the Jedi Council as a whole would no longer be either as large or as powerful as it was, because enough people would splinter off to do their own thing.
So different little factions. Now, I want to explore something that you'd said about, you'd have like these different groups kind of peeling off from the main council. Do you think that Obi-Wan, knowing his devotion to the order and the council, do you think he would have split off with Qui-Gon, or do you think that he would have stayed true to the order?
Had Qui-Gon lived, I think he splits off. In the current reality where he's gone, I don't know. It's a bigger question.
Yeah,
I think it would have depended a lot on how the Mace Windu faction responded to the Dooku Qui-Gon faction. If they treated it as, again, my inner Catholic's kicking in, like a Lutheranism, like somebody who's kind of preaching more of a, okay, we're on the right path, but we've veered off a little bit, so we just need to course correct, as opposed to, okay, well, we can't stand you and you and you, so we're going to break off and form our own clubhouse and our own Jedi. Or, if the council had responded with opposition or resentment, I think Obi-Wan would have gone with Qui-Gon, just because he has his faith in his master, and everything he knows comes from Qui-Gon, and he trusted Qui-Gon. If they, I think the Jedi Order as a whole needed a course correction.
Sure.
And we see that from the Acolyte, where there were people who were just kind of going through the motion, living their life, thinking they're doing the right thing. And then there's people with the deep, dark secrets that have, small councils and whispers and private meeting sessions, and don't tell the Senate that we have a murder mystery going on, because it would be bad PR for the order. If I think a Qui-Gon Jinn really could have changed a lot of minds. Sure. If he had been given the proper voice.
Yeah, potentially.
And I guess for me, this is a question, because again, I've read some of the books, but not all of them. I don't even think they cover it all. Like, I think Qui-Gon would have been okay with Obi-Wan being with Satine. I'm sorry, not Satine, Sabine.
No, it's Satine.
No,
right.
Sorry. Yeah. Well,
yeah. You were right in reverse. Yeah. We knew what you meant.
Sabine's a little young for our boy Obi.
Or just the idea of a a Jedi accepting a non-traditional student like Sabine. They would open the whole thing with Anakin being too young to be indoctrinated into the Jedi teachings. It's like they sort of they put up walls on themselves.
They do.
It was so easily exploited by Palpatine, and you just sort of sit there and think, well, if he's a late bloomer, but if you like you said with Ahsoka, you raise him with multiple masters, giving him different points of view to kind of, I think Palpatine's influence on him would have been less, because it would have been a case where the BS Palpatine shoveling on him in private, a Qui-Gon or a Plo Koon or somebody like that could have been like the wise old uncle that could kind of say, hey kid, come here, let me set you straight.
And we see one thing we see from the Jedi Order, it's part of their hypocrisy. They talk about how only the Sith deal in absolutes. The Jedi are very much the same way. The Jedi have their absolutes, and the training of someone who's too young, that, Qui-Gon had to force that. He had to force that on the council. They were like, nope. Yoda was like, too young. Nope. Out the door he goes. And that was it. So, I mean, they deal in absolutes as well. There's good and there's evil. There's no room to be in between. There's right and wrong. There's light and dark. That's it. Those are absolutes. I mean, but the Jedi will not acknowledge that. And so that, and as we know, they're very much, the same coin. Sith and the Jedi, same coin, different sides.
I know Sam has come out, and said it quite often, and part goes back to Lucas and all that. Like, yes, in canon, there's no such thing as a gray Jedi. In reality, like in just objective reality, though, that's kind of what Qui-Gon was. Like, he understood the value of some of the Jedi teachings, but also understood where they were wrong, and understood that you can't be all this,
right,
and exclude all these other things. And that's where this would have gone had it not been for Palpatine's influences. There would have been more of that type of break from the schism.
Yeah.
As a former Jedi costumer, I'm going to push back a little bit on the idea that gray Jedi. For the most part, gray Jedi are people who want to dress like Jedi but have a red blade and without the moral responsibility. Yes, there's obviously people who would sort of walk the line a little finer than a traditional Jedi might, like a Qui-Gon or a Kanan Jarrus. You'll find out later on. But I think there is a certain point where you sit there and say, okay, it's like that great line from that Brotherhood book where Qui-Gon says, I go towards the light not because I'm trying to win some giant galactic game, but because it's the light. In the fandom, us nerds, that when we think about Star Wars and what kind of Jedi we would be, a lot of people who associate themselves as gray Jedi just want to be like the Punisher of Star Wars, where they look cool and they get to kill who they want and not have
with no consequence.
No consequences.
Like I see it more like if we're talking about like gray Jedi, neutral Jedi, the Imperial Knights, they're not canon anymore, and we'll probably never see them in action, but I thought they were a great example. They had white lightsabers. They didn't serve the Sith or the Jedi. They served the Emperor, who at that time was not like an evil emperor. He was actually a cool dude-ish, as cool as an emperor could be, I suppose. But Emperor fell. But and Ahsoka, she still leans good, but she's I think a good example of a gray Jedi.
Well, again, to kind of drift into the Japanese metaphor, my girl over here, she was a perfect example of a Ronin.
Yeah.
Somebody who, broke away from the traditional, hierarchy and just pursued what she thought was right, whether it was doctrine approved or not. And that again, that's the best parts of Anakin showing up without the baggage.
Yep. And again, we see those Japanese influences again, that masterless samurai, just walking the earth.
And that's thing similar to that. It's a code of honor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if it's not necessarily the Jedi code, it's a code of honor. It's a set of rules that you personally abide by, that keeps your moral compass in line. And that's the Punisher style characters and those other things.
And that's Ahsoka as well. She is going to do things the right way, even though it might not be the Jedi way.
Right.
She'll get involved to save a life, even if it's, not what the Republic, would like. She's going to do the right thing for the right reasons, even though it's not the Jedi way. So we're going to see lots more of her, and I'm very excited for that. I want to wrap up by talking about, we got a couple things, but we're just going to recap Palpatine's final moves here because it's just ridiculous. So he ends up with, and the parallels are scary, control of the Senate, control of the war, control of the military, control of the public opinion, control of the media, control of the banks. He had all of it. He also created this myth of insecurity that he used to get his emergency powers, which allowed him to get all the the control of all the other things. And then while all of this was happening, he was slowly building this narrative of the Jedi and vilifying them, slowly, just kind of like just drip feeding it to the citizens of the galaxy. So when they turned traitor, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, there's no way that could have happened.
There must be a logical reason for this.
There must be a logical reason for that. Oh, here we go. Granny O'Donnell says Palpatine scapegoated the Jedi. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, again, I don't want to touch on real life stuff too much, but, when we look at other, real life authoritarian rule and authoritarian administrations and governments and things like that, one of the first things that they do, and this happened in Germany, is you take a small minority group and you vilify them. You get the masses to turn on this small minority group. You turn them into health hazards and terrorists and criminals and all these things, which then allows you to gain this power to remove those people. And the citizens at large, they're like, okay, yeah, cool, because these are bad people. Let's get rid of them. Yes, get rid of this small, harmless minority group that can't defend themselves because they're a health risk and they're gonna, rape my grandmother and they're gonna, do all these terrible things. They're terrorists. They're criminals.
And then once he gets the ball rolling,
right,
you get caught up in it too. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait, I'm not a bad guy. Why am I getting caught up in that?
Right, and that's the thing. And then the stormtroopers come and they take you away. It's like you were all about them, the stormtroopers taking away the minority group, and you were all about voting for those emergency powers. But those emergency powers are blanket powers. It's not just. They don't just start and stop with this minority group, whatever it might be. It covers all citizens. So once he's got that emergency power in place, now, yes, we're starting to see the stormtroopers getting people off the streets and deporting them or moving them into camps or just straight up disappearing them.
This is the first they came home, right? I mean,
yeah,
they came for these people, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't one of them.
Right. And then they came for me, and no one would speak for me because everybody else was gone. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It doesn't take much for an administration to turn you into the bad guy. If they're able to twist things around so much to make you believe that the Jedi, inept as they were, I wouldn't go so far as to say they were corrupt, but they were definitely inept, to make these warriors of peace, which I know that's an oxymoron, but they are warriors of peace, to vilify them to the masses. It's a masterstroke, but it's also out of the authoritarian playbook. It is authoritarianism 101.
Well, and going back to the Eastern influence, again, there's a great movie, The Last Samurai, that shows Imperial Japan, in the we call it 1800s era, mm-hmm. They were westernizing their country, but they had traditions, and in this case, the samurai were a tradition that didn't work well with capitalism. So amazingly, they had to go.
Yeah. And
it was a great movie. I mean, if you're into samurai or if you're just into action movie,
yeah, it was a good movie.
The story behind it is a true, applies to Star Wars too, where you see this culture that had been around for generations vilified because the people in power wanted to take over more of that for themselves, and they knew that these guardians of the old tradition would get in their way.
Right. And that's how you do it. You make the people that are in your way, you make them seem like the bad guys. You know, we saw it. I mean, we saw it in the United States, in the infancy of the United States, you know, where we wanted land and there was an indigenous population that was standing between us and the procurement of that land. And what happened? You know, I mean, we vilify, they're savages and murderers. And, you know, it's like, well, they wouldn't have been. I mean, you know, like, yes, they are.
Bad luck, Gorman.
But yeah, exactly. You know, and Gorman taught us that. But again, Star Wars, love it. Parallels, cautionary tales. And it's just, I love Star Wars so much. Okay. So season 7, what to expect moving forward without doing too much in the way of spoilers, especially for you, Tony, since you haven't seen it. Again, we've got Ahsoka's return. Yay! Oh, no, wrong button. No, wrong button. There we go. I even have my buttons labeled. So, I mean, for me to push 3 incorrect buttons is just unacceptable. I need to be fired. Okay. Ahsoka's return. Siege of Mandalore, which, woo. That's I think that's a good one. That's a good one. Anyway, because everyone's coming back. Everyone's coming back for season 7, like you had said. You know, Crash, and we saw the whole cast there. We're not seeing Katie though. She's not up there, but she's coming back for season 7. Our girl Bo's coming back. Anakin's final arc, moving from beloved general to something just a little bit darker for Annie. And then there are so many emotional payoffs and emotional gut punches. So season 7 it's not just an ending to a series, to a great series. It's a slow motion heartbreak in 4 parts.
and let's not forget, you know, it's also an introduction to a new batch, literally a bad batch.
Yeah.
You know, again, we're wrapping up Clone Wars, and we're going to meet this new group that's just sort of like really fun to watch, and you start to pick your favorite out, and eventually, you know, they get their own spin-off. They're so good, they got their own spin-off series, unlike Omega Squad.
I think you're only saying that because Karen Travis wrote Omega Squad. I'm
just saying, did you see the thing? This sidetrack a little bit. The new Superman, David, what's his name? Actually is a big Star Wars fan and recommended. Everybody asked him, "What do you recommend reading?" And he said the entire Rogue Squadron book series.
Oh, okay.
And I posted on our Facebook page. I was a little bait for you. I was like, "Yeah, notice he didn't say Karen Travis."
Probably because he hasn't read the books. Had he read those books, were he more informed? Were he, you know, more literate? Because the Rogue Squadron books are written at a lower level.
Of
course, the Republic Commando books are at a much higher reading level. So, I mean,
I will take Michael Stackpole against Karen Travis any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
All right. Well, I mean, that's just, I mean, that is an indictment on the American education system, what you just said. So that's, you know, that's okay.
You're entitled to your opinion.
You are entitled to your opinion.
It's fine that it's wrong, but it's
okay.
I'm just saying, Superman's on my team. I'm just saying.
That's fair. That's fair. I've got Mandalorians and Jedi, but I mean, Superman's a cheat code. He can't stop Supes. All right. So homework. We're going to be taking a 2-week break. So we're going to come back 2 weeks from now, whatever date that is. I don't know. Keeper of the Holocron. What is that? What's that?
So 2 weeks, you got July 4th and then July 11th. So the return day would be July the 18th.
All right. I think that sounds right. Okay. So between now and then, what your homework is to watch the 4 unfinished episodes of the Clone Wars. So those are Death on Utapau, Search for the Crystal, Crystal Crisis, and The Big Bang. So that is a solid arc. It's a little wonky to watch because it's unfinished animation. But the voice acting's all there. Everything is, everything's is there that should be. It's just a little bit funky to look at. You don't need to search all over the place for these. I found a Mad Lad on YouTube. Channel is Nerd SW, which Star Wars nerd, love it. He has one video, and it is all 4 episodes in one video. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes. You've got a little movie length feature there. So sit down, get a bucket of popcorn and a soda or whatever. Sit down and watch these really wonky looking episodes. But they are canon, and there is some gap bridging that goes on with these.
Make sure we put that in the comments for the
the YouTube link will be, YouTube link will be in the comments. So that's the homework. I watched it already, and it's I'm not gonna lie, it's funky. It is really funky. It looks like just concept art. It's that previs stuff, and it's just funky marky. It's okay though. But again, I thought the story was great. It's worth it. Even if, you know what, do it as a podcast. Just listen to it. Like, you don't have to watch it. Like, just, look at something pleasant and just listen to it, or close your eyes, listen to it, and then think about what it would have looked like had they had the time and the budget to actually put these together. Because these were supposed to be part of season 6, but they, obviously they got cut. So that's going to do it for us. You guys got anything on the way out?
I think we covered it. Yeah, season 7's exciting. So, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. One more time, I got to show this map. So for all of our listeners, you got to see this map. It is the Star Wars Galaxy map, and you can find that on the official Star Wars website. Yeah,
official Star Wars website, and they also have a link to the spreadsheet of every planet on the grid and where they are. And so if you're looking for a specific planet, it's all alphabetical, and have at it.
I love it. I absolutely love that. And I want that. I want that in a frame hanging on my wall. Yeah. Oh. Granny O'Donnell says, I love the nose art on the Bad Batch's ship. Shame on you, because if I remember correctly, that nose art was Padme, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's a pinup drawing of Padme. We posted something on I think it was on our Swarzy Curious page. We'll have to put it up on our main page. There's a deleted scene from the Bad Batch episode of season 7 where Anakin is going out to their ship and sees his wife plastered all over the nose in a seductive pose. Mm-hmm. Like, you thought Clovis was a dead man. I think Anakin was ready to take down the whole Bad Batch personally.
Yeah, I think he's like, yeah, that's coming down.
That's coming down.
That's coming down. And somewhat, I think one of the batch, they're like, yeah, she can negotiate my hostage release any day or something like that.
Yeah, Wrecker, when they were explaining who they watch her on the holonet, and I'm just like, okay, first off, four brothers watching the same C-SPAN, porn of like the hot senator. I'm like, that's a little awkward. Is it just Wrecker? I'm hoping it's just Wrecker and not like all 4 of them.
I'm betting it's probably just Wrecker, because he is that guy. But that's classic military. That's classic military. Yes, a bunch of dudes in a war zone would absolutely watch C-SPAN just to see the hot senator. 100%. And paint her on the side of their plane or their tank or whatever. Yes.
Yeah, whoever drew her is like a they all have individual talents genetically. One of them's a damn good artist if they could make that good of a drawing of Padme.
I'm betting it's probably tech.
Yeah, I go with that.
Yeah. All right.
I'll find that.
All right, so before we head out, we're going to do some obligatory pimping here. Check us out on social media at the SWS Show everywhere. And if you want to get some sweet, sweet merch that you can see Crash modeling seductively right there. There we go. Head on over to our website, circleofnerds.com/merch, and pick you up some stuff. All proceeds go to, I don't know, because we've never gotten any proceeds except from us. So I don't know where it goes. It just goes into a bank somewhere. And I think there's like $10 or something. I don't know. But yeah, go get some merch. It's good stuff. And, get some Swarzy Curious shirts that you can wear at cons and things like that, and show your support for the show. Subscribe, of course, to our YouTube channel, our TikToks, our social media accounts all over the place. We sure would appreciate it. And of course, we appreciate you for joining us this week. You could be doing something, be anywhere else right now, but you chose to be here with us this week, and we do absolutely appreciate that. And as always, a special salute and tip the cap to our active duty service members and veterans for your service and sacrifice. We absolutely appreciate everything that you've done and continue to do in the service of this nation that will one day be great at some point. Anyway, so that is going to do it for us. One more time, you guys got anything?
Nope.
No, we're good. All right, that's going to do it for us. So thanks again for joining us this week, everyone. And remember, as long as if no one, I can't speak. And it's my own catchphrase. If no one does anything nice for you, please, by all means, do something nice to yourself. And we will see you all in 2 weeks, right? Not next week, in 2 weeks. All right, that's it.
Have a good 4th, boys.
A good 4th? Oh, that's right. The 4th of July.
Yeah.
Right around the corner. I totally forgot. Independence Day. All right. Hopefully we'll get attacked by aliens. All right. Bye, everybody.